Hi. Okay, I think it should be better. Let me share my screen. Can everybody see my screen? Run the speed test. Okay, that's much better. Got 30 megabytes. Okay, that definitely should be better. All right, excellent. Let's keep going. Sorry about that. So I was saying that NPM is a site where folks can share their open source projects, specifically for Node.js. And there's quite a bit of projects that we're going to be using from here from this website. One of them we already used, the Create React app. Right? If you look it up here, Create React app. There it is. If you open it up, it says that the publisher is Facebook, right? And folks, weekly downloads. They download 134,000 times, and they use it to create some boilerplate React components. Okay, so that's the first one that we're going to be using. We're going to use quite a few others as we go, but definitely you should consider creating your own projects, right? Your own Node.js projects, which you can share here, and folks can download them and definitely become popular here. Definitely. Okay, so we used that to create our first React project, and which has the node underscore modules. Another thing that defines this as a Node.js project that implements the boilerplate React.js project. Okay, is that it has the node underscore modules. That's how you know it's a Node.js project. It also has package.json, right? And package.json is a very common file that you will find in all Node.js projects. Okay, that it describes your project. Right? It's very much like if you're using Java, you would find pom.xml, right, in a Java project. It's basically a description of the project, right? It declares, for instance, all the dependencies, any libraries that need to be downloaded and installed before you can run this project. So, for instance, this one is saying that to be able to run this project, you better have downloaded React and React DOM libraries. Okay. Also, it defines several scripts that allow you to interact with the project. For instance, start, which we used yesterday. Or when we met, we did npm start. Yes, and npm start runs this script that starts up the project. You can also use npm build. This will build the project, right, and create a deployable set of files that you can then deploy in a remote server. And that's what this is what Netlify does, right? When it's about to deploy the server, what it does, it runs this build script. It compacts all the source code into just a few files. You might have multiple JavaScript files, lots of HTML files, lots of CSS files, right? What it does is that this build process, it compacts everything into just a few deployable files that concatenates everything. It also minifies all these source code, removing unnecessary spaces and tabs and new lines. Also, it might rename variables that are long variables into short ones, just to compact the size of the deployable package, right? Also, it allows you to run tests. If you have any tests implemented in Jest or any testing environment, you can run the tests. Okay. Anyway, so this is a Node.js project because it has package.json. Perfect. So we also said that the entry point for the React application was this index.html, right, inside of the public directory. We mentioned last time that all web applications, right, anything that has to do with the internet, right, and definitely this is a web application. Obviously, it's running on the internet. it follows the client server architecture, right? And in that architecture, there are two pieces of software, one the server and one the client, where the server is for all for eternity waiting for incoming requests from the client, right? The client sends a request to the server. The server opens up the request and says, "Oh, you want this particular file or this particular whatever." Right, the server looks for that resource, right, and then sends it back to the client. So that's the overarching architecture of in the internet. Now, specifically for web, right, web is built on top of the internet, right. It also follows the client server architecture, but it uses specific servers and specific clients. In our case, the clients is the browser. The browser is the one that sends a request to the server for response, okay? And the server, in this case, is hosting this content here in the public directory, right? The server receives a request and then looks up for whatever you ask for. In our case, typically we would ask for the root of the website, and the root of the website is mapped. The server maps it to this public directory, right? By convention. By convention, public directories is the root of the website. Okay. Also by convention, if you don't ask for anything in particular, if you don't ask for any specific file or image or sound or whatever, or movie, by default, it looks up at the root of the server and it looks for a specific file, and the file is called index.html, right? That's a special name, index.html. It has to be spelled exactly like that. And it's the default entry point. It's the default file that goes back to the client if the client doesn't ask for anything, right? And this is the case. We're not asking for anything, so this is the default entry point. If we open up that entry point, we'll see that it's a fairly bare bones, almost empty HTML document, right? HTML documents. You know it's an HTML document because it has this header up here, right, that says that it is HTML. It used to have the version of the HTML, but that has been deprecated. So right now it just says that this is an HTML document. And all HTML documents use this kind of language, right? This kind of pointy brackets and tokens, right? It's basically written in XML, right? XML is an extendable markup language, which is a generic language for being able to create hierarchical documents like this one. Right? HTML is a specific use of XML. Okay, you can create your own languages, right? Using XML. That's what it's called, extensible markup language. Right? There are languages for describing, chemical compounds. There are languages for describing, formulas. Mathematical formulas. There are XML for describing all sorts of pieces of information, right? So what Tim Berners-Lee did in the early 90s, he said, well, I'm going to use XML. I'm going to create my own language, right, to describe documents that for me to share my research with my colleagues, right? And so he decided, well, all HTML documents start off with the root HTML tag or HTML elements. Okay, so that's kind of like the container of the entire document, and in there are going to be two parts, right? Two large parts. One is going to be the head, right? The header, kind of like where you can describe meta information about the document, and then the body where it's going to contain the actual content, right? That's going to render. And he was thinking that the body would contain, research papers, research articles, where you could have titles and paragraphs and lists and tabular data with columns and rows and images, and also links to other research papers. I mean, that was the original intent. Okay. Obviously, this has grown beyond what he envisioned. Anyway, so this particular document that was created by Create React app is a very simple HTML document. If you open up the head, it has some meta stuff here, meta information about the document. Notice that it has a tags literally called meta. And so the things that it does is that it describes the content, what it is, maybe who the author is, when it was deployed, when it was created, things like that, right? It allows you to load other resources that this document might need, right? Maybe JavaScript or maybe some styling libraries. So it allows you to declare dependencies, right? That this document, to be able to consume this document, you also need all these other stuff, right? In particular, here we are loading a favicon. This is the icon that appears here on the top left when you have the document open. So this is a boilerplate. It's created by Create React app. We should never touch this, but us being developers, we will touch it just to play around and learn what's going on, right? Now in the content is almost empty, right? The content contains two things. It contains this no script tag. This tag tells the browser, if the browser somehow is configured in such a way that it doesn't support JavaScript, then let them know. I'm sorry, but you need to enable JavaScript. Okay. Now our browsers are typically by default enabled to support JavaScript, so you won't see this. Instead, what you'll see is this div root. Okay. Div root is a div. A div is a tag that allows you to break up a document into multiple vertical rectangular areas. Okay. But notice that the content, right? We say that the main content is here. This would be the main content. Notice that it's empty. There's nothing in there. Okay, there's absolutely nothing in there. So when you run this, right? When you run this npm start, you see that there's actually something there, right? There's the content. You have a spinning image. You have this element here, right? It says to learn more, like hyperlink. So where is that? It's not there. I don't see it. Okay. Actually, you can play around with this, right? You put some content here and says hello. There it is. See that hello? So indeed, I am editing this content, right? Maybe down below we can say goodbye. Right? Save that. Notice that indeed, see there's goodbye down there. So we are editing the document. This is the document that is rendering this whole page. Okay. But I don't see this. Well, probably because we do support JavaScript, so we don't see this, right? But this root is somehow rendering all this stuff. Where is all this stuff? Well, that's where the React.js magic happens. That we're not going to cover that literally not yet, right? For a couple of weeks, or not yet. I'm just going to give you a sneak peek preview, okay? Just so that you can follow along what's happening here. What's the magic behind this? What's happening here is that we have a separate directory, the src directory, right? And this is where we're going to spend most of the time, right? This is here. We're going to not touch this file. Well, I mean, we're going to play around with it first, right? We're going to break it for now, right? But eventually we will restore it to its original self, right? Which is what was created by default. But what's happening here is that there is a React part of this, right? That is dynamically generating this content. All this content is being dynamically generated, and the JavaScript is manipulating this document and injecting the content in here, right? All right, so here's a tool that we're going to be using quite a lot this semester, right? If you right click on the screen, if you say inspect, okay, it brings up a developer tool, right? This is a developer tool, which I'm going to put here on the right hand side. There it is. You notice that it is the main content, which is being rendered, right, for the human user, and here you can kind of see behind the scenes what's going on. This kind what Neo would see in the Matrix, right? This is what everybody sees, nice, pretty pictures and text and whatnot and hyperlinks. But this is what Neo sees, right? What's really behind the scenes, all the text and tags and behind the scenes, what's going on, right? The reality of the universe, right? So there's our hello that we wrote. There's our hello. There's the no script. There it is, the no script. There's our div root. There it is, our div root. But here it's empty, right? But here it's not empty. What's going on? There's our goodbye. See that? There's our goodbye right here, right? But our div root, we don't have anything here. But here it is not empty. We see a div class. We have a header. We have an image, right? Notice that if I highlight this, right, it tells me exactly what on the left-hand side this piece of this tag is rendered here on the left-hand side. See that? There's a paragraph. There it is. See that? There's the anchor at the bottom, right, and the header. So where is all this content? Where does this happen? Well, all that magic happens here in the source directory, right? If you open up the source directory, just like there's an entry point to the static content, this is static, there is an entry point for the dynamic content, index.js, right? Index.js is where the magic happens. This is the JavaScript that is magically injecting all this content into the HTML, into the root right here, right? And how does that do it? Well, there it is. See the root right there? Okay. Right, the plot thickens, right? It uses JavaScript to retrieve an element by its ID, whose ID is root. So this is retrieving this element right there. See that? Okay, and it's being used. Notice the comma here is being used as the second argument to this function right here. See that? So this function is somehow injecting into the root this content right here. So render, right, it's a function that is part of the React DOM library, right? That is injecting, is rendering, right, the following into the root. Okay, awesome. Now, why DOM? What does that mean, right? Well, React, that's the name of the library. What does DOM mean? So DOM means document object model, right? Document object model means exactly this here on the right-hand side. See this over here on the right-hand side? That's the document object model, meaning it's a object representation of the screen, right? The screen has a visual representation, but it also has an in-memory object representation. Okay, here it's being rendered as if it were text, right? But it isn't, right? We have these hierarchies and these objects that have parents and children, right? They're nested together. It's an object representation in memory. The actual text, you can also ask for the text. You can say view page source. See that? If I open it up, this is what we have, right? This is the text. This is literally what? It's literally this page, index.html, right? It's this content right here. So this is the page. I asked it for the source, which doesn't contain anything, right? It doesn't contain it. It's the text that gets parsed. It gets we run the JavaScript, and then the JavaScript then modifies the representation. What the browser does is that it reads this piece of text, right, and it creates in its mind, in the browser's mind, in the browser's memory, it creates this model. It parses it and it creates a model of the document, and we call it the document object model, the DOM. All right, very, very important. Right, keep that that acronym in your mind. We're going to be using that quite a lot. That acronym, the DOM. So anyway, so React DOM is a library that knows how to manipulate the DOM, right, and inject content into a certain piece into the screen. Make sense? All right. Still, where is all this content coming from? Where's the image? where's all this garbage over here, right? Well, it's inside of app. See this app here? App here is a tag. It's not. It doesn't look like an HTML element at all. React allows you to create your own HTML elements, which is pretty cool, right? Just by creating these classes, right, or these functions. App isn't a function, and you can reuse it here as with the name of that function, which is being imported. We can go in there. Notice it's right here, app.js. You can go in there. It's this one right here. And what is it? It's just a regular function, a function like in any other language, right? In Java or C# or Python, it's just a function. Okay, the name of the function is called app, right? And it returns. What does it return? Ooh, look at this. Okay, this is the content that we're seeing. That is the content that we see rendered right here. See that? It says edit code. There it is, edit code. See the hyperlink down below, learn React. There it is, learn React. And here's an image of the logo, which is spinning. See that? So there it is. So this header is this header right here, right? This image is this image right here. See this paragraph? There's the paragraph, right? And we can edit it. We can edit this. We can say, welcome to webdev. I save it and I come back and notice that indeed it has been modified. Make sense? All right. So that's a little bit too much into React.js itself, right? We're not actually going to cover React.js for another couple of weeks. Let's step back a little bit, right? And get back into what the topic for today is, right? We're going to leave this for now. We're going to leave React.js for now. And instead just focus on HTML. We're going to be focusing, what are all these divs? What is that? What's an image? What's a paragraph? What's an anchor, right? We haven't even looked at that. What is that? We don't know that, right? So let's spend some time covering that, right? And cover some of the basics stuff. Okay, so what we're going to do? What we're going to do is that for now, right, I'm going to just comment out our index page. I'm just going to blow it away for now. I'm just going to blow it away. Right? If I do that and I come back and I refresh, notice that none of the magic is happening anymore. None of the magic is happening anymore. My index page is literally only the hello that I have typed, this div root that nobody's doing anything with that root anymore, right? Because I commented out the React.js, right? So now this div is just a dumb div. There's nothing in it, so it's not rendering. And then my goodbye. Yes? Okay. All right, so I can now go back to my index page and just play around with HTML. And that's what we want to do today. That's what the upcoming assignment is going to have you do. It's going to have you just practice HTML. Just play around with some of the very, very basic stuff in HTML, right? Just to get you going. I know some of you might already be familiar with HTML. Yeah, you might have built some simple websites perhaps, or maybe at work you've been doing some Angular. I don't know. I don't know where you are in your trajectory here, but I know that some folks have never done HTML, right? They don't even know what HTML stands for. Okay, so let's spend some time play around with HTML. Let's get the basics going, so that you can build up some confidence here, and then go on and build your own stuff. Okay. All right. Any questions before we get started? Everybody good? All right, let's play around with the HTML. Let's see. All right, so if you go here into the second week and you open up the HTML slides, this is it, right? This is where we're going to be just taking a look at some of the very basics of HTML. Let's see something in the chat. Oh, well, the chat is not rendering. Why is the chat not rendering? Uh-oh. Can you still hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Hey, why? Oh, man. I think Zoom is maybe crashed on me. What's going on with Zoom? What is Zoom misbehaving? All right. I don't know if you're asking questions.
Someone had just asked about if it's okay to follow along in a different branch in Git, I think along with the lecture, which I'm sure is fine.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, if you feel confident enough that you can listen to me and play around with it in another branch, sure. If you do get stuck, I'm not going to be able to help you right away. You know, we can take a look at the code together at after class. I'm going to have office hours, and we can take a look at it together. All right. I can't see your chat. If you do have a question, please, you know, just let me know, and we can cover it. I don't know why Zoom is not letting me see the chat. Okay, so HTML, there we go. Let's present. This is the very, very basic stuff of HTML. We're going to be covering more and more advanced as we go along, but this is the bare bones that you're going to need, right? So first of all, what does HTML stand for, right? So HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language, right? It's based on the more general language called XML, right? So XML stands for Extensible Markup Language. And what we mean by markup, right, is basically this, right? That you have some plain text, like this text is bold, right? You have just some plain text, and when you render it, well, there's nothing peculiar about that text. But if you mark it up, right, meaning you add some context around it, you know, something before and after, then now this text is no longer just plain text, right? It's a text that has been given some properties. And in this particular case, is that this text is now going to be bolder. It's going to be, the text is going to be bold, right? And that's what this opening tag B and this closing tag B means, right? That the text within, right, is now going to be rendered bold, right? And there might be another markup that might make the text yellow or blue or underline or italic, right? And so what hypertext, what the HTML does is that it defines a vocabulary, a collection of these tags, right, that allow you to format the text in different ways, right? There's B for bold, there's U for underline.
I think the screen is not updating.
I'm sorry?
I think the screen is not updating.
I think
I haven't changed the screen.
We're still seeing the presentation,
Yeah,
not the actual.
I haven't moved from the screen. I'm still at what is HTML.
Yeah, we're not seeing that.
We're not there.
Oh, what are you seeing?
We're still seeing the Chrome window.
Oh, okay. Oh, geez. All right, let me quit Zoom. I'll be right back. See if that restarts again. Sorry about this.
Could also be easier to just reshare your screen.
Let me see.
Chrome or something.
Quit.
I'm seeing your mouse moving, so it might be that we're just not seeing the presentation.
Yeah.
I can see a blue screen written HTML.
Yeah, I also can see.
Yeah, but I don't know why some people can and some people don't. Let me quit.
I think the reason is probably because if you're using the present button, your screen share that Zoom took is
maybe
it creates a different screen. So I would probably just like scroll through it in your Chrome window, not use the present button. I think that should work.
Okay, so I won't share. Do you see my assignment 2, creating web pages with HTML?
No, still
No.
the Google Slides.
Okay.
Still the HTML.
All right, let me just quit. I'll be right back. See what's going on. Just hold on a second. Oh, it's not even quitting on me. Interesting.
You're muted.
You're on mute.
Professor, you're on mute.
Okay. All right, let's try it again. Do you see my what is HTML?
Yeah.
And now can you see creating an HTML web page?
Yes. Yes, we can.
Okay. Okay, I'm not going to use the present. I guess maybe that is what ruined it last time. Let's see. All right, so what is HTML? Is a particular use of XML that allows you to declare format HTML documents like this, right? Where you take plain text and then you can make it bold, underline, italic, whatever, change fonts and whatnot, right? So it converts plain text into hypertext, right? That it's marked up, text that is marked up, right? By adding these tags between them. Now, why hyper? Hyper, the name hyper comes from the fact that some of the text, not only you can make it look prettier, bigger, bolder on the line and whatnot, but you can also make it so that the text is associated to some kind of action, right? It could be that you can format the text so that if you click it, right, it'll navigate to a completely different document, right? It'll throw away the document that you're in and then navigate to a different document. The idea behind that it was that Tim Berners-Lee wanted to be able to connect multiple research papers, right? If you've read research paper, you'll notice that it'll have all the text and then embedded in the text, it'll have small, numbers that reference certain other research papers, from where the quote or from the text that he copied and pasted there or that he's writing, where did he get that information from, right? And he has references, right, to all other documents. So he wanted to be able to, for his colleagues to be able to quickly go back and forth between his presentation, right, his document, his article, right? And then the server can process this data, right? So text that can take actions, right? That was the intent. So how do you create an HTML document? Well, an HTML document is very, very simple to create, right? You just have to create just a plain old text file, okay? And give it the extension HTML. So let's do that. Right? So we can go to the webdev here, okay? And under public, we can create a new document. We'll call it hello. So hello, right, there it is. There is our brand new HTML document, okay? And with the default structure, right? Let's see something on the chat. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
We can now.
And I think you just froze for a sec at some point.
Okay.
That's basically what happened. But you're fine now.
All right, good. So yeah, so here's the document, and this is the bare bones simplest documents ever, right? It says that this is an HTML document. This is the root tag. Oops. The root tag saying that the language is English. It has the header that the only thing it's declaring is the title, right? That's going to be the name of the tab when we open up this document in our browser. And here we can say, use hello from webdev. Okay, now we can run this real quick. We can say just run hello.html. We can right click and just say run hello.html, or we can do it over here. We can right click and run hello.html, right? We can say run, there it is. And there it is, hello from webdev, right? Our very first HTML document, a trivial one, doesn't do much. Okay, very, really simple. Okay, we can view the source, which is literally the text that we wrote, right? That's literally the text that we wrote. That's going to be parsed by the browser. The browser parses this text and generates this DOM. See that this is the document object model. We click on body, right? Notice that this is the text that we typed here. There it is. Okay. All right, excellent. We can change this, right? We have this is some other text, and maybe we can make a list item 1, item 2, and maybe item 3, and says, this is a list. Okay, if I save that and then I refresh this, notice that all my great format is gone, right? Even though I had to put white spaces and tabs and whatnot, to create bullets, it's completely, the browser is completely ignoring all that formatting. Let's see, a question. What is the relation between .html and markdown files? Yeah, they're two different languages, right? A markdown is a simplified language, right? That it's much more and much less verbose. Okay, that it gets interpreted by a compiler, and it generates the HTML that the browser understands, because the browsers don't understand Markdown, right? The browsers are always only going to understand HTML. Now, what Markdown does is that it's a higher level language that it gets compiled into HTML, which the browser can understand. Yep, good question. Okay, so somehow the browser is ignoring all my nice formatting. What's going on here, right? I would love for this to be maybe a big bold title that introduces the content of this page, right? Right now it's using what's called an inline layout, right? It's laying out the content in inline, right? Using a policy called inline. And the policy of inline is that content is laid out from left to right, from top to bottom, right? It'll flow from left to right as far as it'll go. And then when there's no more space, it'll just wrap and start in the next line, right? That's the default layout mechanism for laying out the content. Yes? But we can introduce other layout mechanisms, right? For instance, one of the things that I like to do is that if I want this to be a title, one big title at the top, right? I can say, well, I don't want it to be inline. I want it to maybe do a break, right? I want to make a break where, this here is all by itself in one single line, maybe in bold black letters, right? And then have all this maybe pushed down, right, underneath the title. Yes? So how can we do that? Well, we could use one of many formatting tags, like for instance, H1, right? Let's do H1. See that? Okay. So H1, like the name suggests, it's a header, right? It's a heading tag, right? It's and you can have multiple headings, right? Just like in a long document, right? That you might have headings of one size, right? And then smaller subheadings, right? So there's just like you could do the same thing. You have H1, H2, H3, H4 that are incrementally smaller headings, right? H1 is the biggest heading, right? So let's say that, go back, right, and refresh. And now notice that, yeah, there we go. We have this big bold letters hello from webdev, and the rest of the content has been pushed down vertically. Yes. Let's keep going. About this, this is some other text. Maybe this could be. This is a very long paragraph. Okay, and maybe let's copy this multiple times. So this is all in one single line, a very long paragraph. If I refresh, notice that the text just wraps. Let's make it smaller. Too big. There it is. See, notice that the text goes from left to right. Notice that at the end of the long paragraph, you still have, this is some other text, and then the items, right? Again, it doesn't break as if it were even if I add space above and space below, right? If I refresh, notice that it ignores it. It's still one long piece of text. Yes. If I want to make it into a paragraph, I have to explicitly, right, format it as a paragraph, right, using one of many tags, such as the paragraph tag, P, right, and then close it here, meaning that's the opening. This is where the paragraph begins, and this is where the paragraph ends. Okay, and what's going to do, if I refresh, notice that indeed now it breaks it up. right? This is the paragraph, and then whatever goes after. Notice that it adds some spacing below it, right? Some margins below between the paragraph and the content down below, right? Makes sense, right? Maybe this list might be a subtitle or maybe a subheading, so I can make it maybe H2, a smaller heading. And if I refresh, notice that again it's bold. It adds vertical spacing, right? So what we're doing here is that now, you know, certain content is behaving inline, right? It goes from left to right, and then it wraps in this normal space. But some other content is adding vertical spacing, right? It's not behaving inline, right? So we call the layout where text is broken up and then content is pushed down vertically. We call that block elements, right? So for instance, H1 is a block element, right? It behaves as taking up the entire width of the screen, right? The entire width of the screen. And then since there's no more space for anything else, it just pushes everything down, right? Paragraphs are also block elements, right? They take up the entire width of this page. Smaller, right? Notice that it's wrapping from left to right. When there's no more space, it just wraps. So the what's inside the paragraph is still behaving inline, but the whole paragraph is behaving like a block element, right? It's taking up the whole width, and then whatever else is on the that continues just gets pushed down. Make sense? H2 down here is also behaving a block. See, it's taking up the entire width of the screen. See that? And then since there's no more space, it pushes the rest of the content of text further down. Make sense? So anyway, this still doesn't look like a list, like a bullet list. So to do that, we have special tags to do that, right? There are several types of lists. There's bullet lists. There are enumerated lists. There's quite a few different types of lists. Okay, let's take a look at the simplest one. It's called the unordered list. Unordered list, right? So we're saying, hey, here's my unordered list. You know, if I add the content in here, and I refresh, notice that, yeah, almost, right? It at least added some padding on the left-hand side, kind of like an indent, right, where it's going to put all the bullet items. But to make them actually bullets, we have to wrap these into what are called line items, or the line items of a list, right? So we can wrap each one of these into an LI. There it is. So let's do it for some of these more. Okay. Okay, let's do one more. LI. There we go. Right, if I refresh now, there's our bullet. See, these are the bullet items. So it adds bullet right next to the content. We don't really need the asterisk anymore, so let's remove the asterisk. Item. There it is, just the bullets. Make sense? Or I can have another list, but this time an ordered list, right? Where you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So instead of UL, we can have OL. Okay, save that. Let's refresh. Oops. Let's refresh. And there it is. The first item, the second. So it adds the 1, the 2, and the 3. Make sense? So there you have it. That's basically HTML, right? Conceptually, it's what? It's converting plain text into formatted text, right? Something that you would do in you know, if you're using Word processor, right? You know, Word or Google Docs, right? Where you select a piece of text and then you say you want it bold, italic, or you want heading 1, heading 2, whatever, right? It's making it look pretty. So behind the scenes, you know, that's what these processes are doing, right? They are, you know, they're tagging pieces of text with some context, with some meta information about how you want it to be rendered. Yes? Here we're doing it by hand. Everybody good? Everybody still with me? I mean, and there's tons of tags. There's tons of tags, right? We're only just gonna, you know, scrape the surface, some of the more interesting ones and the more useful ones, right? And so anyway, so I did create a slide for this. Let's go over the slide. It's going to review some of what we've covered so far. Maybe I forgot a couple more, and then we can come back here and play some more. Yes? All right, let's go back to the slide. Any questions so far? All right. So there it is. So here's created maybe hello HTML, and the document is going to have this format, right? It's going to start with a doc type. It's going to have a root tag HTML that wraps the whole content. Then you're going to have two portions, two sections: the head section and the body section. Again, remember the head section is where you have the meta information about the document. This doesn't get rendered. Nobody sees this. The human user does not see this. Right? What they actually see is whatever's inside of the body. Okay. If you put it outside of the body, then it doesn't get rendered. Right. So if I somehow move this here, right, and I move it into the head, right, and then I rendered. Notice that my list still renders. Yeah, browsers try to be very forgiving, right? Notice where it put it. See that? It put it inside of the body. So the browser is smart enough and say, you put it in the wrong place. You put it inside of the head. That's not where it goes, right? It's smart enough to say, to realize that you put it in the wrong place. So the browser is very forgiving, and it says it's assuming that what I meant was put it at the beginning of the body, right? And that's exactly what the model says, right? The document, notice that the OL is not in the head where we put it in the text, okay? But it put it inside of the body, right? Notice that it put it at the beginning of the body. See that? And that's how it's rendering here. Yeah. So browsers are very forgiving, right? You could give it a lot of garbage, right? It'll try to make a best guess of what you meant. Now, browsers for phones, right, or smaller, smaller devices, they might have a reduced version, or they might have a very smaller browser that doesn't have as much memory, doesn't have as much power to make all these guesses, right? And it will just fail, right? It will not render correctly. So just be careful. Don't rely on the browser, doing things for you. Okay, so. But yeah, let me put it back where it goes. Here we go. Let's refresh. Okay, there it is at the end. Okay. Yeah, so all the content needs to be inside of the body. All right, so here's one type of tags that we haven't seen, right? Comments. Comments allow you to add, like any programming language, right, some text that might be useful for us developers, right, to make a quick note and describe the actual content for ourselves, right, so that we might remember, when we come back later on, a couple months later, we can say, oh, yeah, I remember what this was all about, right? So comments can be a single line, or it could be multiple lines. Also inside of the body tag here, we put some hello. We can also link. We can put in the head, we can put references to other documents that this document relies on, right? For instance, here we are linking to a file called style.css that presumably is used for styling to make our document look prettier, okay? Or we can have our own style CSS either remotely in some part of the world, right? Or we can have it as a local file, right? And reference a local file with our content, right? Yeah, HTML is based on XML, the extensible markup language, and HTML is the root element. Then we have a head, we have a body, right? Notice that here's our hello world, blah 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 blah, all this content which this doesn't render very good. but then we use paragraph, the paragraph tag, to add some vertical spacing, right? Headings, we just saw a couple of examples of headings. We have the H1 heading, H2, all the way to H6, right? And they are increasingly smaller titles or headings, you know, subheadings, subheadings, and so forth, right? And you're very useful for introducing new topics, right? That you want to describe, right? That are subtitles of the previous content. We have lists, right? We just saw creating unordered lists and creating ordered lists, right? And we're describing them here. You know, the semester, spring, summer 1, summer 2. Here's an example of an ordered list. You know, ordered list, follow these steps, learn HTML, learn Java, build stuff. Unordered list, we saw examples of that as well. Table is also one of the more powerful elements, right? It allows us to create tabular data, right? Where the content might be rendered in a tabular format like this one, right? Where we might have multiple columns and then multiple rows, right? Especially if we have content that needs to be rendered or formatted in a tabular format. And we'll see an example of that as well. Then we have forms that we might use to retrieve or ask for information from the user, right? And the main version of the form elements, right, is the input tag. So input tags allow you to create these boxes where you can enter actual text, right? You can label them, right? You can give it like a descriptive label, you know, what it is I'm asking you to type, right? And then you can give them a unique identifier. You can say what type is it. You know, are you expecting text? Are you expecting number? Are you expecting a date? What are you expecting? Are you expecting me to type an email? Right. So there are quite a few different types of input fields, and you can just configure them here. Is it a checkbox? Is it a radio button? What is it? Right. You can give it also a title. Title is useful for like a tooltip, right? If you hover over the input field, it'll show you the title, right? As like a hint of what you're expecting. Also, placeholder is also another nice way, an elegant way of giving an example of what it is that I'm expecting, right? You know, if I'm expecting a username, you know, you might put here something that gives me a clue that that's what you're asking for, right? I might put maybe John Doe, right? Or if I'm asking for an email, I might give an example of an email a date. Okay. Now these dates, when it allows you to scroll through the months, the years, right, and select a particular date. Now you can give it an initial value, right, where it's the default value of the input field, right, that using the value attribute. So this input, right, and label, you know, and H1 and table and T-body, right, that's called a name of the tag, right? It's also sometimes referred to as the elements, right? The HTML element, right? That's a more appropriate name, but folks use mostly tags. And we have the closing tag, right? And then what's in between the opening and closing, we refer to as the body of the tag, right? What's inside of the opening and closing tags. Now, some elements, like the input field doesn't have an opening tag and a closing tag, right? It doesn't have a body, right? There's nothing in between the opening and closing. So what it has instead is a closing slash. See that? Meaning that, you know, I don't have an opening and closing. It's just one. It's just like the opening and closing are really, you know, merged into one single tag, right? It is both an opening and a tag, right? And you know that you have this slash. Whereas label does have an opening, right, and a closing tag. See that? Whereas input doesn't have an opening or closing. It has just one, which is both an opening and closing tag. Make sense? Each one of these elements or tags can be configured, right, to behave different ways, to format or do certain. Been using the type to define whether this should be just a plain text, or I'm asking for a date or number, an integer, right? You can ask these kinds of things. You can configure. So these are called attributes, and then these are the values of the attribute, which are typically in double quotes, right, or single quotes. You can have an ID attribute, which allows you to give this element a unique identifier, and then there's the value attribute, right, that allows you to give it an initial value. Now, this initial value, notice that here it says November 22. There it is, November 22. So the format for dates, follows this format. It starts with year, four numbers for the year, dash, then the month, dash, and then the year, and then the day. Okay. Make sure you remember this format. I believe it's in one of the quizzes, right? That it asks you about the format, about the date format. You can also have drop downs, right? Where you can have options where you can select from a drop down, and you do that with the select elements, right? And then inside you can provide the multiple options for the drop down using the option tags. So here we have 3 options, and there it is, 1, 2, and 3 options. This is the text that is displayed for the human user, faculty, student, and admin. But the actual value, when you select this field, the actual value that the element takes is whatever whatever option you choose. The value of that option, it will be the value of the overall select field. Okay. And then you have a whole bunch of buttons, radios, and checkboxes, such as a simple delete button, right, or an edit button, or an update button. Okay. And they can be of different types. The buttons can be of different types. The button, the type button, is just a regular old button. It doesn't do anything, right? You can assign it different behaviors later. That if you click it, this happens. But if the type is submit, right, it means that if you click on this button, right, all the input fields and text areas and drop downs, right, and checkboxes, all those values are going to be collected and then sent over to a server for processing, right? We're not going to be using that, right? Instead, we're going to be using JavaScript to do that. We're not going to use this behavior of the submit button, right? More on that later. We have radio buttons and checkboxes, right?
It's not showing the yeah, it's stuck on drop downs with select
okay.
slide.
Yeah, I just noticed that that Zoom crashed on me again. It's giving me some weird text here. All right, let me quit. I'll be right back. Sorry about this. This is terrible. Just a second. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Let me share it again. Sorry about this. I don't know. This is the first time this happens. Weird. All right. So yeah. So this was I think this is where we left off, right? The drop down, and we have also buttons, right, that allow you to collect data and send it off to a server, or when you click on it, it'll allow you to invoke some function that can do some work for you. And we have buttons, special buttons that are checkboxes, or radio buttons, where radio buttons typically are meant to be mutually exclusive, right? Where you can either choose yes or no. If you choose one, it unchecks the other. If you check the other, it unchecks the one. Right? And the way, and you can have multiple questions with multiple yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, right? And so the way you group them, and they know about each other, and that you know that if I choose this one, it unselects the other, right? That they're mutually exclusive, is that if they have the same name, right? If they have the same name, it means that they can be mutually exclusive. I think there's a question in the chat. ID is used to uniquely identify any HTML. Yes. Was that a question, Sanat?
No, I just answered.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So ID is for uniquely identifying elements. Yep. Then we have anchors. Anchors allow you to link together documents, right? So that if you click on a text, for instance, this text here says, all lectures available, and then on my YouTube channel. So the text here, presumably notice that it's blue, it's underlined, and that if I click on it, it'll take me over to some other place. So the way we accomplish that is that we wrap the text, right, which is normally just plain text. We want to convert it into hypertext, text that is hyper, that it wants to do something, right? And the way we do that is that we wrap it around with an anchor tag, right? There it is, the anchor tag, and we configure what happens when you click on that text. What happens? Well, it will navigate. Your browser will now navigate away from wherever you are, and it'll then instead it will show some other piece of some other website or some other page will be replacing your content. Okay. All right. Okay. So there you have it. This is a crash course on HTML. Let's practice a little bit with the assignment. So the assignment is asking you to do a couple of things, right? So if you go to H2, it asks you to practice how to work with HTML. Now, most assignments will have 3 parts, right? The first part is a practice part, right, where we handhold you through the whole thing, right? We tell you exactly what you need to do, with the intent that you get to practice all the things about that particular week. In particular, what we're going to be practicing this week is playing around with HTML. Yes. Then the practice is followed by a build section, right? And the build section, we don't handhold you, right? We ask you that now, with having learned something from the practice, well, now apply that and build something, right? Now, for our case, we're going to be building a website, right? Throughout the entire semester, we're going to be building a website. Everybody's going to be building the same thing, right? We're going to be building a clone of Twitter, right? We're going to try and make it as close as possible to what Twitter is, right? We'll try and make it look very, very close to Twitter, and do some of the features that Twitter allows you to do. Okay, so practice and build. Now, challenge, and then there's a section of challenge, right? And the challenge is more advanced topics and more things that are a little bit more edge, some bleeding stuff that you might want to play around, but that's mostly for the graduate folks, right? The CS 5610 folks, right? It's required for them to complete. It is not required for the undergrad, unless you want to try it out, right? If you're bored and none of the other courses are pressing you, then by all means, I welcome you to try it out as well. Okay, but it's not required for the undergrads. Now, if towards the end of the semester, you missed an assignment, or you're running into some issues that we might consider perhaps letting you work on some of these challenges to prop up a little bit your grade, but that I really wanted to leave that as a an edge case, right? For like the exception, for the person who really needs it, they have very low grade or whatnot, and I'll give you a chance to perhaps boost a little bit your grade. And we'll consider that on a one-on-one basis, depending on different contexts and whatnot. Yes. Yeah, so let's get started with the practice just to get going on getting the flavor of what it is that we're asking you to do here. Okay, so what we're asking you to do is that open up the project that we created last week, which is the webdev, and do all your work in the public directory. Yes, we'll be doing in the public directory. We're gonna first practice playing around with the heading tags. Okay. There's a little blurb here explaining what heading tags are. I encourage you to read through this whole thing. Don't just go and jump to the code and start copying and pasting. All right. Although a lot of it is copying and pasting from here, but nevertheless, I encourage you to please read through this, which should give you some context of what it is that we're doing. All right. All right. So first of all, we ask you that instead of the public directory, we ask you to create a directory for each one of the assignments, right? So for instance, here in the public directory, we're going to create A2, direct A2, okay? And inside of A2, we're going to create another directory called practice. So practice, right? And in that practice, we're going to create an index file. So we're going to practice, new HTML file, index.html. There it is. There's our index file. Perfect. All right. Right now it's empty. Okay. And we're asking you to create just a few headings, right? Heading 1 and heading 2. Let's copy that. Let's copy that. This 2, and let's paste it inside of the body. There it is. Right. We can run it by right-clicking on it and saying run index. I believe I tell you that. The file will to see the web page, right click the index file and select run index. So I tell you to do that, right? Again, this first part in the practice, we handhold you the whole way through. We tell you exactly what to do. If you find an error, let us know, let the TAs know, and perhaps what workaround did you use, right? So let's try it out. We'll say run index. There it is. HTML pages, heading tags. Yes, it's basically this content right here. Everybody good? All right, let's keep going. And then the assignment asks you to play around with a paragraph. Oh, wait. I highlight in red here, copy and paste the first paragraph. So this first paragraph. So let's copy this first paragraph, copy. And paste it in the right here where it says copy paragraph here. Okay, let's do that. I'll just paste it here. I just pasted it. There it is. Right, I can refresh the content. Let me close that. Close that. Close that. Let's refresh. There's our paragraph. There it is. Perfect. Okay, excellent. Let's keep going. The file will open, blah, blah, blah. Okay, the paragraph should look very similar to that. All right, the paragraph tag. Browsers, okay, so what we saw, we already saw is that the browsers tend to ignore spacing, right? The white spaces, the tabs, the new lines, and that to be able to introduce this formatting, we have to explicitly use block elements, right? Either heading elements or paragraph elements to add our vertical spacing, right? So to add spacing to the paragraph, right, we can use P, right? So we're going to copy this. Let's copy this content. And we're going to paste it here at the bottom. Make sure that you're always inside of the body, right? Don't paste it outside of the body. So you're inside of the body and towards the end of the document, okay? If we refresh, there's our paragraph. There's our paragraph tag. Perfect. So let's play around with a little bit, right? What if you just have some long text, right? You copy it. That looks like these are 3 paragraphs. You copy them and paste them here. Paste them. So this is our first paragraph, the second paragraph, and the third paragraph. Right? If I refresh, notice that the first, second, and third paragraph are not breaking, right? They're all kind of run into each other, right? And that's because we mentioned earlier is that by default things are rendered in an inline policy, right? From left to right, when there's no more space on the right on my right, right? It just wraps and then goes to the next line. That's the default behavior, right? To achieve the actual format that we want, we need to put paragraphs around it, right? So let's do that. Let's go on here. Let's add paragraph around this. So P, right? And let's add that. And let's do it again. Okay, and again. There we go. Now, if we go back and refresh, now we have the first paragraph, the second paragraph, and the third paragraph. Perfect. Excellent. Anyway, these are really, really simple exercises just to get you going, getting you accustomed to marking up content, right, and seeing the results of your fruit. Okay. All right, so we did that. How about list tags? Right. Again, let's see. Create first an ordered list right down below here. And here's a list of steps how to join the 1%. How to join the 1% in 4 easy steps. Okay. So let's do that. Let's copy this content. Copy that, and I'll paste it at the end. Right. So this document, this whole thing, eventually you're going to add it to your repository. You're going to push it to your Git repository, right? And you're going to push it so that the TAs are going to be able to clone down your project, right? And then they're going to be able to grade you on your repository. Anyway, so we copied that. Let's refresh, and there's our ordered list. And somehow, right? It's not formatted correctly. What happened? My first step, my second step. I mean, I added 1, 2, 3. What happened? It's gone, right? Right. I wanted it to look like this, right? Get a master's in computer science, get a 100K plus salary starting job, marry a like-minded engineer, and do great work for a decade, right? You'll join the 1%. But somehow it didn't work, right? It didn't. I could not get to the 1%. I mean, it didn't format correctly. And so to format it correctly, we have to explicitly add the order, the OL tag, and then the line items for each one of these. So let's try it again. Copy that. I'm going to replace this whole thing. Replace it, and now I have the ordered list. 1, 2, 3, 4 easy steps. Let's refresh this. See, now it's rendering correctly with the number there. You can also configure to be, instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, it could be A, B, C, D, or use the Roman numerals. So there's quite a bit of configurations on how to style that. See something on the chat? If your end goal in life is not to join the 1%, that's also okay. Yes, absolutely. All right, so let's continue here. If you have we can also use the unordered list, right? That doesn't use the 1, 2, 3, 4, right? We can use instead the unordered list that uses just plain old bullets, right? So let's play around with that and copy that. You paste it towards the end. And paste it. There it is. Unordered list. So my favorite books. And so if you render that, notice that indeed you have the bullet. Dune, Lord of the Rings, Ender's Game, blah, blah. All right. This is some of what we've already done in our hello.html earlier. Okay. Right. And so this is just a formal assignment, right, for you to practice it and make sure that we've covered most of the HTML tags that we want, right? Tables, we haven't played with tables, right? So for instance, tables allows us to create tabular data, right? That you have columns that have the same data type, and then we have rows that represent data points, right? That we collect for each one of these records. And so here in this case, we have 3 records, right, of 3 different quizzes that we are going to take throughout the semester, right? And then we have columns, right, that they all have the same content, right? The name of the quiz, the topic that it's covering, and the dates, right? And then the grade you got in that particular quiz. Plus, you have this first row typically is referred to as the heading of the table, and then the last one typically is referred to as the footer of the table, right? That allows you to describe the content at the top, and at the bottom do maybe some aggregates or sums or averages of all the data. Okay. Also notice here that each piece of data is in its own cell, right, in a grid. Whereas this one, the average, is taking up 3 columns, right? It's taking up 3 columns, right? So you can configure a piece of text to either span, by default, it spans just 1 cell, 1 column, 1 row, right? But you can configure it to take up more space in the table. You know, take up maybe 3 rows, 3 columns, right? Or 2 rows, right? You can span across multiple rows or span across multiple columns. All right, so let's see how we do this. All right, to do this, we're going to need quite a few tags, right? So we'll need a root table that declares the container of the whole table, and then declare the heads and bodies and footers. T head, body, and footer, right? Declares the head, the main content, and then the footer of the table. And then you can have rows, right? Table rows, multiple rows. And then TDs is the table data, which declare the columns of it, right? All right, so let's take a look at this, right? Let me copy this. This is a table, right, that implements this layout over here, right? With quizzes, topics, date, and grade. Okay, so let me copy that, and let's paste it here towards the end. Let's paste that. Let's just look at this real quick, right? So there it is. This is the root table that contains everything in the table, right? Width kind of specifies that I want the table to span out the entire width of the screen. Border also tells me that I want to see the actual border. Otherwise, it would be transparent. I wouldn't see the actual grid, right? And the table is made up of a head, body, and the footer. See that? The head has 1 single row, and then the row has 4 headings: the quiz heading, the topic, the date, and the grade. Okay, and then the body has several rows. It has, let's see, it has 1 row, 2 rows, 3 rows inside of the table body, right? And then each row has 4 columns, right? The column of the name of the quiz, the topic, the date, and then the grade, right? Same thing for the second row. Quiz 2, CSS, the date, and the grade. And then row 3, right? With quiz 3, the topic, the date, and whatnot. See that? If I do that, now the footer is interesting because over here we had 4 columns, whereas here we only have 2 columns. See that? But this first column is spanning 3 columns, meaning the content of average is going to take up 3 columns, right? And then you have the last column will be the 4th column, which is the 90, which is right underneath each one of these 4th column over here. Okay, so there's column span, and there's also row span that allows you to go multiple rows, and column span allows you to go multiple columns. Right, so let's save this. Let's go back and re-render this, refresh, and there's our table. See that? Right, with the columns and the rows. Okay. All right. What else? Let's see. There's images. Right, images allow you to go and fetch other files that are not contained in the document, right? And those images could be outside on the internet, somewhere in the web. You can retrieve that file and render it inside of your browser, or it could be a local file, right? A document. So let me copy this. Let's copy that, and if we paste that in here, at the bottom, and we refresh, we see that we have we've loaded an image from the internet that I found somewhere, and I know the URL. I looked it up on Google, right? And I knew that this was the URL, and so there's a server out there, right, called the Star Advertiser, right, that contains an image of Elon Musk's Starship to Mars, right? Down below we have a local image, right? It's looking for a local file called TeslaBot, right, using the image tag, the img tag, image, not oh my god, OMG, it's img, right? That has 2 attributes. One's the source that describes where to get the file, the image file, either on the internet, and then downloads it to the browser, And then you can specify also the width. You can specify the width and the height. Okay. If you only specify the width or the height, what it does is it scales the other one, right? So since here and it maintains the ratio, right? It maintains the ratio. If you only specify one, right, it scales the other. But if you specify both, right, it'll skew it, right? It'll deform the image to fit into the height and the width. All right, so I don't have TeslaBot. I would need to download that image and copy it locally, right? And then it would use that image, right? I'll let you do that. That's for your assignment, right? Let's keep going. Forms, you can create all sorts of forms elements, right? So for instance, we can copy that, paste it here, and then we can render this. So there's a couple of fields, right? Username, passwords, first name, last names, right? And it's implemented using this rendering, right? We have the form. Form is a new field. Okay, this chat. Are we expected to submit practice sections? Well, yes. Everything that I'm doing here, you're expected to submit. Yep. So there's the practice part, and there's the builds that you're going to build on your own, right? So, so we're running a little bit of time here. So let me just go and jump to the builds. In the builds down below. So after you've practiced doing this, you're expected to build on your own the following. Okay. So under a new directory, under A2, under a new directory called Twitter, we'll do A2 new Twitter. So under here, you're going to start creating several pages, right? One of the pages that we ask you to do is the navigation page, right? So this navigation page is going to allow you to navigate between multiple pieces of Twitter, right? You can. There's a home page for Twitter, the explore, notifications, messages, bookmarks, and whatnot. Okay, and we ask you that in the public index.html you create links, hyperlinks that allow you to navigate to the practice, as you navigate also to the navigation, right? To the Twitter clone, right? And this will allow the TAs to be able to grade you on the practice and also grade you on the Twitter clone. Okay. So here's the home screen for the Twitter page. No styling. We don't know how to style things yet. We don't know how to make things black or blue or anything like that. That's the next week we'll do that. So we don't know how to do that just yet. So for now, it's going to look pretty ugly, right? So it's going to have some bold Twitter, then a subtitle, home, an image that represents you, and then some piece of text where you can type in your posts, right? Who can view your post, and you can upload an image, right? If you want to attach an image to your post. Okay. Are we required to make a responsive page for the assignment? Not for this assignment, right? We don't know responsive yet, right? We don't know how to use CSS to make things responsive. We will do responsive next week. In the next couple of weeks, we're going to be doing responsive design. Then below our heading, right? We will have a post, right? That says the topic, an image representing the user who created this post, right? A link to their profile, right? Their handle. How many hours ago did we post this? Some dummy content representing the post, right? And then down below some statistics, on how many people have replied, how many people have retweeted this, how many people have liked this post, right? And you can share this. Obviously, none of this works, right? For now, it's just going to be static content, right? We're going to be building throughout the semester. We're going to be building all the stuff that goes behind this, right? That makes it actually work. Okay. Right now, for this first part, right? For this part of the build, right? All of this will be static, right? Static content. We then ask you to create two posts, right? One post and then followed by another post. Then there's a tweet screen, right? The tweet screen is that if you click on tweet, it'll navigate to the tweet screen, right? This is what you would see, right? And again, the form text area where you can type the tweet, who can see it, you can upload a file. You don't have to upload a file just yet. We don't know how to do that yet. And so, don't ask me on Piazza. Oops, what happened? Can you still hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, Zoom just seems to have crashed. Jeez. All right, let me know if what's going on. Yeah, it just removed the bar for controlling Zoom. All right, whatever. And then again, we're going to have a profile screen. The profile screen typically has, it says profile. It has a
We
little,
can only see the tweet screen part.
Yeah,
We can
yeah,
only see the tweet screen part. You are not scrolling to the profile.
yeah. Okay, let me restart. I'm sorry. Let me restart just a second. Back. This is crazy. Okay, can you see my screen again? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so
Yes.
there's a profile. Yeah, you can see my profile screen here. I'm scrolling.
No.
Yeah.
Yes, right now, yes.
Yeah, so the profile screen is where users can, change their profile image. They can change their name. They can, tell something about themselves, right? When they joined, how many followers they have, how many they're following, right? And some links that allow them to tweet or look at. People can look at the tweets that they have done, the replies, the media, right? And finally, an edit profile screen that navigates to a screen that allows you to actually edit your profile. Okay, where you can change your background image, you can change your profile image, you can change your name, you can change your bio, right? Okay, so up to this point, this is what everybody's doing, right? The undergrads and the grads. Following that, comes the optional part for the undergrads if they want to play around with it, right? But it's required for some iframes that allow them to embed content like movies or slides or Google documents into their documents, or even embed entire websites inside of our particular website, right? So you can play around with iframes. You're also going to be playing around with being able to navigate inside of those documents. And finally, you're going to be playing around with some scalar vector graphics that allow you to draw images and draw all sorts of polygons, right on the screen, right, using the SVG or the scalable vector graphics tag that allows you to embed things such as rectangles, circles, polygons, right? And here's some examples that we ask you to play around with, and adding some polygons, right? In anchors, you can play around with, be able to create things such as tables of contents, right, that allow you to navigate, jump around in a page, right, and then navigate to the top. Okay, so yeah, so some more challenges that for the graduate folks. We're not actually expected to have the name change, right? Yeah, no, all this content is static. None of this is dynamic, right? We don't have JavaScript yet. Until we don't have JavaScript, none of this is dynamic, right? And we won't see JavaScript for another 2 weeks, 2-3 weeks. Okay, so yeah, no, all this is static, right? Well, the only thing that is dynamic is that you can navigate, right? When you click on the hyperlinks, you literally go to that other page, right? Or you can navigate back. So that's the only part that is dynamic, being able to navigate in the hyperlinks and whatnot. Okay. All right. Any questions? That's all I have for you today. Let's see. Quick question about assignment 1 for the GitHub URL. Should it just be the HTTPS clone link? Well, no. It's when you go to GitHub. Oh, I don't have a link to that. When you go to, let's see, GitHub, Community WebDev, right? Yeah, it's this link right here, that link, which happens to be also this, but this just as .git, right? That's the only difference. But you can just copy it from the URL up here. Also, Netlify. Netlify is also just the URL of where you have this deployed. So in my case, I have it deployed here. Let's see. So it's this one over here, right? If you click on it, right, it's this URL right here. So if you just click on that and submit that, that's plenty, and the TAs will be able to navigate. Now for this assignment, you won't be able to deploy this, right? You will not be able to deploy it because we broke the application, right? We commented out the React part, right? So this is not going to work if you push it and redeploy it to a Netlify. So if it's broken, if Netlify is broken for the next couple of weeks until we get to React.js, that's totally fine. Don't worry about it. Right? We'll come back to it and reconstitute the application so that it works again. All right. Where do we store? Let me see. Where do we store our local images to be used in this assignment? Yeah. So for instance, in the example here where we were using the Tesla bot, right? This means notice that here you can provide // or you can navigate right to a particular file, a particular directory, whatever, right? Since it has no directory or anything like that, it means that the file is expected to be in the same folder as this document. So if it's inside of practice.index.html, the image would have, the file would have to live in the same directory. Okay. Where do we store the local? Okay. Hi, Professor. In A2, it said submit the link to your GitHub repository and remote server. Yeah, that's always going to be the same for all assignments, right? The link to the remote server is this over here. That, see that when this is running on Netlify, that we worked on this on last Thursday, and we deployed it to Netlify. That URL, we need that URL so that the TAs can navigate to your application that's running on Netlify, right, and verify that you did that. Okay, so that's the remote server. What about when the TAs are?
I thought that.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, I thought that you said we should not be deploying A2 because it will break. It will be broken.
No, it will break anyway because Netlify is configured by default. It's configured that if you push something to GitHub, it will automatically deploy. Right, and because we broke it locally, and you're going to be pushing code that breaks it, it will break the Netlify. And what I'm saying is that it's okay.
But that's fine. Yeah,
that's
we should
fine
still submit. Yeah.
Yeah, still submitted. We still want to know what those URLs. The TAs are going to copy those URLs in our own spreadsheet just to keep track of what everybody's Git and what everybody's remote server is. Nevertheless, for each assignment, we're going to ask you for exactly the same thing. Please submit the Git repository. Please submit the remote server URL, and that's going to be your submission every single assignment. Okay. Is there a section TA we have to add to our Git repo as well? Wait, is there a section TA we have to add to our Git repo as well? I don't know what that means. Hi, Professor. Looks like there are some folks, including myself, who are not in the spreadsheet yet. Okay. Yes, I know. We recently opened up the the number of folks to get into the course. So there might be some 10 or 20 of you that are not in the spreadsheet. So yeah, please we'll look at that post and make sure that we add you to the spreadsheet. And if you're still not there, just reply to that same post, and then we'll make sure to add you to the spreadsheet. Thanks you for the build command setup in Netlify. Should we use yarn, build, or npm? You can use either one. You can use either one, whatever works for you. So depending on the version of your Node.js and your version of Create React App, it might not be the same version that Netlify uses it, and it might be that yarn works for you or npm works for you. When we complete A2, will the Netlify break? Yes. When you push your Git repository, I believe it'll break it. So we always submit the 2 links for every assignment. Yes. Sorry, I just want to clarify. So if we do A2 or something and we break Netlify, that is okay. Yes, it is okay. Hi, Professor. Should I add every TA and professor? I don't believe you can add more than a couple of folks as collaborators. I think maybe only 2 or 3, unless you pay for GitHub. So I think there's a limitation. So we're only requiring you to add a particular TA as a collaborator. So not all the TAs. How much time do we have to do the quizzes? Quizzes will be, at most 20, 30 minutes at most at the beginning of class. Yeah, so if you can't make it on Thursday, right, we're going to give you a separate location with a TA for you to schedule taking the quiz then. When can I know which TA should I add? Yeah, we have to add you to that spreadsheet, and again, there's about 10 or 20 folks that were added recently, and we're still working through that. Do we need any specific software to take the quiz? No, you'll need your laptop and access to Canvas. So all quizzes will be on Canvas, and they're automatically graded. So they're all mostly fill in the blanks, multiple choices, right? And you get a grade at the end. The GitHub user for Powerwall of the spreadsheet is missing. Should that be filled? Yes, thank you. Definitely, it will. I have added all the TAs. Is that normal? Yeah, no. If you can, if GitHub is letting you add all the TAs, that's even better, right? I don't know. The last time I checked, well, actually, that was like a year ago, and GitHub limited the folks that you can collaborate with to, I believe, only 3 people if you did not pay. Right? If you had a paid account, you can collaborate with anybody in a private repo. So private repos had a limitation. Public repos, you can collaborate with anybody. But private repos, I think, had a limitation of like 3 other folks. But maybe they removed that limitation. I don't know. So if you're able to add all the TAs, then that's even better. How do the Git commands from week 1 slides change to push new changes? So once as you're making changes, at the end, when you're done with the assignment, you can do git add, git commit, and git push. Those are the only 3 things you need to do. Right? Git add dot, git space add space dot, then you commit, git commit, dash ma, and then some blurb text to describe your commit, and then git push. It'll push it to the repo. Those are the only 3 commands that you should use. Actually, I'll add it to the assignment. I'll add it to the assignment. Let's say add, commit, and push all your code to your remote repository. So we do git add, then git commit dash am, and then some descriptive text, and then you do git push. All right, let's see. Okay, any other questions? Let's see. I think we get GitHub Pro, which lets you add more than 3. Oh, for the student pack. Okay, that's great. Awesome. Good for you. All the assignments will go to the public folder, right? For now, it is. For the next 2 assignments, yes, everything's going to go into the public folder. When we start React.js, we're going to backtrack. We're going to move most of the content that we have in public HTML in the public directory. We're going to move a lot of that content into the source directory. Okay, and we're going to resurrect all the React code, right? And we're going to replace a lot of the content that we've built for the next couple of weeks. We're going to migrate most of that content over into the source directory and convert those into React components. So we're not going to be, after assignment 3 or 4, we're not going to be using HTML anymore. It'll be exclusively JavaScript. Yep. Anything else? I wrote some class in the hello.html inside the public folder. Is that okay? Class. Oh yeah, of course. Yes, definitely. Sure. Let's see. All right, anything else?
Thank you, Professor.
All right, folks. Awesome. Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you, Professor.
And
Thank you,
see you
Professor.
Thursday. All right, everyone. Thank you.
Yep.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, Professor.
Bye. Cheers.
Thank you, and then good luck with the whole technical team.
Thank you. Yes, I don't know what's going on. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Have a wonderful day.